No.
While everybody's coughing, hacking, dying.
Yes. I know. Okay.
Are we good?
Yes.
Great. All right, we'll call the meeting to order. We do a roll call, please.
Yes. Council Member Fleming,
Here.
Council Member Natalie Rogers. I'm sorry, excuse me, Mayor Natalie Rogers. And Council Member Chris Rogers.
And I'm here.
Thank you.
Great. We have no minutes to approve today. Let's go to public comment for non-agenda items. There's two ways to provide public comment in our subcommittee. One will be on Zoom if you hit the raise hand feature. The other will be here in person. Let's start here in person and see, sir, do you want to make public comment for non-agenda items?
No.
Okay, great. Do we have anybody on Zoom?
We have no one on Zoom.
Excellent. We'll keep moving then. Let's go to our department reports.
And we currently have no department reports today.
Okay. Jason, you don't want to make anything up and just.
Yeah. I think the teams are working hard to try to figure out how we're going to incorporate the new council goal into our world. So you're going to start to see more and more working its way this direction.
Perfect. All right. Thank you. Let's go to new business then, item 5.1. I'll turn it over to Tasha.
And today, for 5.1, we have electric vehicle infrastructure master plan presented by Peter Martin, Deputy Director of Water Resources.
Great.
Thank you, Chair Rogers and members of the subcommittee. Very pleased to present this item to you today. As the EV market is rapidly changing and emerging and growing, we're going to start planning a lot this year on how we're going to start complying with regulations and meeting a lot of the additional goals for the city. That includes the electrification of our fleet. So some of the city objectives and drivers behind this are the fact that it's been added into the council work plan for this upcoming fiscal year. And that was to initiate the development of a citywide fleet electrification master plan. Recently, just here in May of this year, the California Air Resources Board adopted the Advanced Clean Fleets Rule, which really changes rapidly, requires the purchase of electric vehicles or zero emission vehicles for fleets in small municipalities and other public agencies throughout the state. And then, of course, there's a variety of sustainability initiatives and policies and net zero emission goals that the council has, and these are all going towards achieving that as well. So just a little background on the Advanced Clean Fleets regulation. Was adopted by the California Air Resources Board in May of this year. Local governments, including the city of Santa Rosa, are required to show progress on a transition to zero emission vehicles for both medium and heavy duty vehicles and on-road vehicles that are over 8,500 pounds. And that has some timelines associated with it. By 2024, 50% of the vehicles are supposed to be zero emission vehicles, and by 2027, 100%. So it's allowing for some time for the market to emerge for those types of applications. And so we're trying to get ahead of that. There will be some exemptions and alternative pathways for which government agencies like the city of Santa Rosa can comply with this. But really, the rubber hits the road in January of 2025 when we have to start reporting on our progress on this particular rule. So in general, the California Air Resources Board estimates that of the nearly 1.8 million medium and heavy duty vehicles that are on the road right now, approximately 532,000 are subject to the Advanced Clean Fleets Rule and therefore will need to be replaced. So, obviously this helps the state to achieve reduced emissions and also achieve public health goals as well as climate goals for the state And that starts with local governments and public agencies. So in general, we are scoping right now an EV infrastructure master plan. And with that, there will be some goals associated with that. And that will be a roadmap to compliance with the Advanced Clean Fleets Rule, as well as a strategy for continuity of operations and making sure that city services continue uninterrupted. And also establishing a priority of integration with all the facilities throughout the city that we own. So I'm going to talk a little bit today about a high level sort of, overview of the scope of the project. I won't get into the nitty gritty details, but just generally just cover what we anticipate we'll have a consultant do. And that really begins with the fleet electrification market analysis. We made some investment as a city over the past few years in telematics of all the different vehicles. So we'll be able to pull all that data, really understand how a vehicle's used, what its demands are, what it does. That data is available, so we can hand that over. And that will cover light, medium, and heavy duty vehicles. And also, we'll have an opportunity to look at vehicle and charging technology strategies associated with that data. So we'll take a look at the facilities assessments, understand what type of charging infrastructure is needed, if they need fast charging or just kind of a slower demand for charging. And that will include some load calculations and high-level cost for improvements to the different facilities throughout the city. So I created this diagram to just kind of show you how that analysis would occur. And really, you're going to ask 4 basic questions. It really is, how does that vehicle function? What's its range and type of usage? When is it used? Is it, kind of only used intermittently or get very heavy duty usage? And where does it reside? Where's its home base, right? And so with that, we'll be able to take a look at the vehicle type and the future market availability. There are a lot of folks out there that are tracking the markets and availability of the different applications for fleet vehicles, and then move on to different facilities assessments, understanding the electrical systems of the various places where our fleet resides. So, and then we can move further on and create a charger deployment strategy and prioritization, determine financial and funding opportunities for us to move forward, and consideration for integration with local power suppliers. So we'll work hand in hand with PG&E and Snow and Clean Power in that regard. And then a second component that we're taking a look at is really, obviously our operations can't cease as a result of interruptions of power and other emergencies. So there might be an opportunity here to take a look at off-grid renewable and distributed energy potential and opportunities that exist at city facilities. We have some of these already done at a high level, but we can continue to see how that can integrate with charging infrastructure. And then that includes energy storage solutions, obviously continuing to make sure that we have the backup generation needs ensured, and really just understanding the load considerations of new charging infrastructure for all these home facilities. And then, of course, create a plan for phasing in all these charging infrastructures, their capital improvements, and the financial strategies associated with that. And then finally, it's important that we take a look at private development policies as well as part of this. It's very likely that we'll start to see private entities interested in taking a look at using the city-owned facilities or right-of-way to incorporate public charging as well. And so for this council, obviously, or the city in general, it's important to understand the pathway for that, including, standards, different incentive programs or different fee options to make sure that there's an opportunity to integrate that too going forward. And then, of course, just at a high level, we'll cover a couple other deliverables, which is, ensuring that we have some scope for some public meetings, incorporating feedback from key stakeholders as well. And then meeting and coordinating with RCPA, Sonoma Clean Power, PG&E and others, because we're obviously going to have some overlapping interest as everyone is taking a look at this as well. So, and then of course, study sessions and other presentations to the city council and subcommittees. So you might be asking yourself, what about public charging facilities? So I do want to tell you that the parking division has secured grant funding from the Metro Transportation Commission. They're going to be taking a look at the parking fleet's needs as well as all our parking infrastructure, our public parking infrastructure and the garages, other facilities, and kind of taking a look at what it would take to meet the public's needs as well at our city-owned facilities too. So we'll have parking come back at a later time and present to this subcommittee, talk a little bit more about that. I do want to tell you that we have identified a funding source for at least, we hope, for a substantial part of this study. The Department of Energy has released, it's been probably the first time in about 10 years, some funding into the Energy Efficiency Conservation Block Program. So they're block grants. The city of Santa Rosa, as a city over with a population of 150,000, has an appropriation of $210,000. So that money can be used for a project that meets certain criteria, but of their choice. So this is one of those projects that fits very nicely with that. So, and then of course, any additional funding would be provided by the different departments from the operational departments and their fleet needs as well. So with that, I'm happy to take any feedback or any questions you may have.
All right, I'll start with some questions.
Oh, just some of the questions that I've been asked about installation is how are the installers trained and do we have enough in-house installers to install around the city when we do want to go larger or have additional charging stations? So I think those are some of the questions that I've
Sure,
asked.
I'll take a crack at it. I'm going to look over it. This is City Manager Nutt, and maybe you can fill anything I may have missed, but there are standards for the training programs for electric vehicle infrastructure and similar to other, electrician type certifications and things like that. I know that we are putting those into any type of bid documents now and moving forward for large EV infrastructure projects. And then my understanding is we're taking a look at having staff also receive some of those certifications too as well, those that would be overseeing that work.
And actually, in fact, we have already half of our electrical staff is certified. The other half is in the process of being certified. So by the end of the calendar year, we should be fully certified, which far exceeds the state requirement of having one identified in the organization. So our intent was we didn't want to care which of our electricians was doing the work. And as Peter said, every time we go out on track, the EVIT component will be an aspect of any bid document.
Great.
And how many electricians do we have?
6, I think.
Yeah, this is the EVITP issue.
And I know there's been questions about where you conduct the training, and the state doesn't have a differentiation between which certification provider you go to. It's just being able to obtain the certificate. So we feel very confident that our staff is well-trained. They've actually been doing these installations for a decade. So we feel pretty confident.
Any other questions?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, thank you so much. This is great stuff. I'm curious to know about the public program. And the reason why I'm asking about that now, I know you said it'll come back, is that I see it as an excellent opportunity to achieve our climate goals when I'm sure private operators are going to be getting in this game as well, because we here can control that our source is evergreen. And so it does really achieve that in a pretty sweeping way that private groups may not. They may just go for the least expensive form of energy when they are operating charging stations. So I'm just curious to know if you have any preliminary idea around timelines for that. And also if you're already in talks with PG&E about new draws on usage and if there are any hiccups in the time to electrify new uses.
So those are two very good questions. I think Chad will be coming back and talking a little bit about some of the grant opportunity he has and what they've scoped out to meet the needs with the garages and other parking infrastructure. In terms of, sorry, the second question was
And electrification.
yeah. I had an answer for that. Let me think about it. Let me see. Okay, so sorry. Can you just say more?
But what I'm just wondering is, when I talk to folks who are in the business of getting new uses hooked up, not permitted by the city, but hooked up by PG&E,
Transformers. Is that what you mean?
I'm hearing about delays.
So yes,
I'm wondering if we would expect that, or if we as a municipality would get some sort of expedited.
Yeah, you're very right. So yeah, my understanding is there's 9-month to 12-month sort of lead times for them even kind of getting things into the queue with these. So that's why it's really important that we do these types of master plans, because it shows we're serious. But PG&E is rapidly advancing sort of this 5-year timeline for a lot of municipalities like ours, where we can start to hand over a plan and a prioritization of facilities that need to be electrified. Because obviously there's improvements that we have to do on our side of the meter, but the same goes for PG&E. So I think to show them that we're serious, having these plans in place and showing them kind of where we view the priority of these improvements going in, they can start to mobilize. But yes, there is definitely a rush to start to get PG&E to do some work on their side of the meter as well. So
Okay, great. And last question is just around cost, in terms of the cost per mile, in terms of fuel from battery operated vehicles using our own electrification versus, the fossil fuels. Is there a significant differential? Not that it would sway my opinion on it, but I'm just curious to know when I do get asked the question.
I am not an expert in that, but I could definitely get back as we move further along, kind of what we anticipate in terms of the fleet improvements. There are some folks that have shown through maintenance costs and things like that, there's a substantial savings. I don't know what that's broken down into per mile, but we could definitely come back with something like that.
Thanks a bunch.
Yeah, in terms of getting PG&E to prioritize, the running cost is apparently 100 million. At least that's what they told San Jose.
So, okay.
So if we just come up with 100 million, I think we're good on the electrification. My question revolved around, one, who do we anticipate is doing this study? Are we doing that internal, or are we anticipating bringing on a contractor?
Yes, so we are preparing to go out with an RFP very shortly here. It's basically been prepared to go out, and we've worked with purchasing to schedule that. So we will be getting some outside help from a consultant. It's going to be a project that is a joint project right now between Water Department staff and Transportation Public Works, with obviously others contributing as well. So it's a citywide project, despite me being here as the Water Department representative. So we'll be pulling in, obviously the fleet folks. They're going to be integral to this because they have a good understanding of the applications and citing different vehicles throughout the city too as well.
And I bet RCPA would be interested in partnering if there was partnership opportunity there as well.
Yeah, we did include so far in the scope several meetings to meet with folks like RCPA. I do believe we don't want to be doing any duplicative efforts at a minimum, but for sure, I think there's some huge opportunities to make sure that we're working jointly on this. So.
Cool. Do we have any type of an analysis yet on how many of our fleet vehicles meet the medium and high heavy weight?
Yeah, I think in total, I think the fleet is somewhere around 800 to 850 different assets, but I'm not sure which ones fall into that above 8,500 pound gross vehicle weight.
And we only have to account for them. I'd love us to account for them all right away, right? But when we replace them and purchase a new one, there isn't a phasing out component to that bill. Is that right?
So my understanding is that beginning on that date, any, I guess, gas or diesel powered vehicle, there's a 800,000 mile or 18-year timeline that you can still use that vehicle. But if it hits 800,000 years, 13 is the number. So there is an overlap there. So any vehicle that exists can still continue to operate, but that vehicle does need to be replaced within that time frame. So, obviously, I don't have a great picture of the age of the fleet right now, but I'm assuming that just in the first few years here, the light duty vehicles will, is a no-brainer, but over time, I think as they become more available, I think you'll see a pretty rapid deployment. So.
And do we think, I know, I would assume fire trucks fall into the heavy category, but I don't believe there's a viable option that's out there right now for an all electric or a zero emission fire truck. Are there exemptions that are built into the state law for that?
Yes. So certain emergency vehicles do have exemptions. You're accurate in that there's not an application where it can be, ready, 24 hours a day at a moment's notice. But we will make sure that we incorporate an understanding of that as part of the study. We've talked about that just, as we evaluate the market, that yes, there may not be a technology available, but that doesn't preclude it from being an option later as well.
Cool. And then last one, I was having a conversation with the mayor on the East Coast who said what they're really trying to partner with right now is some form of compounding of their charging infrastructure by having battery backups and battery accessible that they charge during the day while the vehicle is being used. And then in the evening, they can draw off the battery and draw off of the infrastructure they've put in. So hopefully we'll consider that level of redundancy to just try to move a little bit faster as well.
And that's more resilient as well.
Yep. Cool. All right, let's go to public comment on this item. If you'd like to provide comment, go ahead. You'll have 3 minutes.
I just have a question, and it's probably appropriate, maybe not appropriate here, but I'm going to ask it anyway. It's just a personal wonder if I project that EVs will surpass in sales the implementation of charging stations. So it's going to be a mad scramble, eventually to try to get your car. I was wondering if in the planning of these stations to charge, could we put 110, or maybe that's already in force, because a little car we have, I don't have to sit there and charge it for 20 minutes or half an hour. I can just, what do you call it? Like in our present vehicles tapping off, or, all we would need was a little time. And maybe there's going to be enough of us out there that when you go there and they're all busy, just plug it into 110 and go shopping, tap it off or whatever you call that, and then go home or go from there. So it's just a question.
Yeah. The good news is that we do have some electric vehicles that we're purchasing right now, and we're trying to get some chargers. We've been able to secure some from Sonoma Clean Power for free. Obviously it costs money still to hook them up, but those are using just what's available at some of the buildings. And so with that, the good news is that we'll be able to use that data we're gathering on, how long it takes to charge a vehicle, how often they're getting charged, and then combine that with the type of driving data. So we could actually see if there's an opportunity there because some vehicles don't go out, all the time. And so, maybe there might be an easier, cheaper strategy there by using some smaller chargers. There may be other times where you just know that you have to have a rapid charge on a vehicle, and that's going to require additional heavier lift in terms of the infrastructure on the city's side to bring that up to, I guess it's 480 volts and other things like that too. So those will have to be considered. Those are larger capital projects to make that happen. So,
Yeah, I assume cars will be sold with the 110 units from now on. If that's going away, well, then this is a moot point, but
Yeah.
I would just suggest you keep that in mind.
No, we appreciate it. Do we have any public comments online?
We have no hands raised on Zoom.
Perfect. Bring it back. Any additional comments?
No, sir.
Great. All right. Looks good. Thank you. Move on to 5.2 then.
Okay, so 5.2 is status update on the 2012 Community Climate Action Plan and 2013 Municipal Action Plan. And I will be presenting, Tasha Wright. I'm Sustainability Coordinator for Water. And I'll be joined by Amy Lyle, Supervising Planner in Planning and Economic Development. So. Okay. So first, I'm going to start out a little bit of background, with a little bit of background, and mention the city's commitment to climate action over the years. All the way back in 2000, the city initiated an important first step to quantifying emissions from city operations. That was the beginning for us. And then in 2005, we were supported by a very small nonprofit now known as the Climate Center. And that organization helped the cities and the county work on looking at GHG emissions reduction targets. And so the city of Santa Rosa set a municipal target of 20% from below the 2000 levels by 2010, and then also agreed to participate in supporting the whole county with their 25% from the 1990 levels by 2015. Then we'll jump ahead to 2012, and of course, we began doing various types of work between that time period. But what became obvious for us was that we needed to really put together a plan on how we are going to get to these targets. So we began working on the Community Climate Action Plan that was completed in 2012 and adopted by Council. And then also in 2013, the Municipal Climate Action Plan was completed and it's adopted as well. So the community one was really for, and I'll go into this a little bit more, is focusing on the outside of our municipal operations, and then municipal being very focused on our GHG produced by energy use at facilities, our vehicle emissions, et cetera. So jumping forward to 2020, and of course we set out on working on all the measures identified in those plans. And then in 2020, the climate emergency resolution was signed, and that was endorsing the declaration of a climate emergency, which included a goal of reducing or reaching the carbon neutrality by 2030. We worked with RCPA and committed to contributing to a development of a countywide 2030 climate emergency mobilization strategy. And that was to focus on identifying key local actions and also integrate climate change considerations into all of our policies. So much of what we've been doing over the last few years has been part of that. So then jumping even farther ahead to 2023-24, as part of the city council goal setting, there was an additional goal titled Addressing Climate Change, and that was really to take proactive steps towards carbon neutrality and environmental education for all. So the key pieces there was to mitigate the impacts of climate change with comprehensive planning and implementation, and establish policies that support environmental sustainability and building an infrastructure investment to facilitate carbon neutrality, all part of supporting that 2020 resolution. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and go through both of those climate action plans. This is going to be pretty dense because there's a lot in it and we've done quite a bit. So climate action plans, as I mentioned, municipal cap or the community-wide cap, known as the C cap, as we call it, addresses the citywide greenhouse gas emissions reductions. And then the M cap, as we call it, is the municipal piece from city facilities and all of our operations. Both of those established a GHG inventory and provided a GHG inventory, set a baseline, and then a menu essentially of implementation measures to be implemented to get us to reduce our GHGs as a whole. What you will also notice in both these plans is that there's a lot of overlap because we do things initially that were identified in the climate action plan with facilities and fleet. Then when the municipal action plan was written, it's more specific, but both things affect community and our municipal operations. So there are, again, 2012, this was adopted. There are 9 different categories written there, as you can see. And there was a total of 115 measures that were identified. At this time, we have 35 that have been completed and then 61 in progress or ongoing. So some of these completed measures rolled into, we did them, yes, but they're ongoing. Not all of them had a beginning, middle, end, done type of thing. And then there was a handful of items too that were identified as, once we looked into them, cost, feasibility, and multitude of other things, maybe they didn't make sense for us to do because we found a better option that made even a bigger impact. And of course, over the years, we've also found additional things that have been added. So I'm going to go through first the completed, and then I'll go through the in progress. And I'm not going to go through all of them because there are so many, but I really want to highlight some of the ones that have been major to our activities and that you'll be familiar with. So Cal Green standards were adopted. Those standards include mandatory standards promoting sustainable construction practices. There's also the voluntary standards referred to as in tiers. And in November of 2016, the city adopted all the Tier 1 voluntary standards that were found to be cost effective. And these include requirements such as wiring for electric vehicle charging, water efficiency fixtures, and recycled content requirements. And then also something else that has been really big for us is that we worked with the county to develop the Sonoma County Energy Independence Program, which provides financing. Initially, the idea was through solar because that was one of the biggest things, but it really expanded into energy efficiency, water conservation, and now it's even been updated for fire mitigation efforts as well. And what Santa Rosa did in order to provide support with that, it passed resolutions to include those programs and make them available to within the city limits. So another one you'll see identified here was explore the cost of community choice aggregation. And as you all know, we now have, yes, Sonoma Clean Power. So that's been, we're really fortunate to have that in our community. All right. So additional, Then the parking and land use management piece, we have policy development that's ongoing to increase density bonus and height limits in priority development areas. There, as you see on here too, it talks about implementing station plans and quarter plans. And these provide incentive to developers to construct high density near housing, near transportation and commercial development. The downtown station area specific plan was adopted in 2020, the updated. And then policy development is always ongoing to increase density bonus and height limits, as I mentioned. There has also been an effort for price on street parking relative to congestion. We keep learning and adjusting. That's one thing that as I was going through all the different things that we have done within the city, it was very evident to me that we're always trying to be flexible and figure out the next thing, whether that's scooters or bikes or changing and looking at how.
But I do think we got rid of that one, right?
Yeah, there are.
That was for the progressive
Yes.
parking program.
And so, right, and so that's why I mentioned, we're
Yeah.
always adopting things and then we adjust as we go through. So this is a good example of that. And then implementing residential permit program. This has been going on for a while, but now there's 6 different neighborhoods plus more now that ensure that only residents park on the street during the day, preventing spillover parking from other activities within the area. So also completed is this list here and the improved transit options and optimized vehicle travel. And one of the recent big accomplishments that falls under this is our EV buses. So the first 4 went into service in late 2022 and City Council approved on 6/6/23 just recently the city bus ZEB roll-up plan. And I see Yuri over there and our champion. Fortunately, we have a few champions in the room here today. So next, so additional completed in the categories of waste reduction, recycling, and composting, and then also water and wastewater on this page. In February of 2014, the city and county adopted the ordinance ending the availability of single-use bags for retailers. Zero waste master plan was adopted in 2020, and then the zero waste food or ware ordinance was adopted in August of 2021. And then on the water wastewater side, zero ware, Santa Rosa Water has been very proactive and their water use efficiency team is absolutely phenomenal. And they continue to do a lot of great programs and they expand them and are able to get additional funding. And so Water Smart Home programs, they are working on the free toilet replacement program again, which is additional funding for that. It's always a great one. So energy efficient or high efficiency plumbing fixtures, which include shower head, bathroom faucet aerators, kitchen aerators, and those are always available to our community. There's the turf replacement program, landscape irrigation, efficiency retrofit, rainwater harvesting, and gray water recycling. In case I can't read. And then also additional outreach has taken place and we've been very proactive through the drought years. And we've been able to reduce over 30% as compared to 20% by water diversions from the Russian River and exceeding even the 20% reduction required by the State Water Resources Control Board. And ordered through October 2022 last year. And we did this on top of our community already having reduced water use significantly over the years. So we asked a lot and people stepped up. It was pretty amazing what we do in this community. All right, and more completed, agricultural and local food, and then off-road vehicles and equipment. There's been, so as far as the established community gardens and urban farms, they are included in new park designs such as Denali and Bear neighborhood parks. There was also the rezoning code, or the revised zoning code to allow for chickens. And then we also, as far as the encouraged provision of outside outlets, this is required as by the residential building code. And then replacing high water use landscapes, as you know, there is the residential turf replacement program. And of course, we installed the city hall water efficient garden as a demonstration project. And then in the limit GHG construction equipment emissions, this is a standard for projects and they're subject to CEQA. And continuing on. So then these are some of the ones that are in progress. And like I said, there's a total of 61. Quite a few here. So one of the items identified was developing a city energy project to reduce energy in all city facilities through lighting retrofits. So later on in slide 17, I will talk more about that in the MCAP and highlighting some of the completed projects. But the city has been very proactive in getting PG&E rebates for switching out lights to LEDs. So that's been very important to us. And as we go, we continue to do that. So provide information on free or low cost energy audits. This we partner, as mentioned earlier, even with the EVIMP process, that we really look to working with Skype, PG&E, Sonoma Clean Power, some of our local nonprofits to make sure that the word is getting out of what is available in our community to participate in our options. And then also identified was to develop a city energy project to reduce energy at our city facilities. So we recently completed facilities and it was done by AECOM, and they looked at all of our main facilities and looked at opportunities for energy efficiency measures and renewable energy, and then also went as far as microgrids and solar. And there were several projects identified, and they've gone back to council with recommendations, and council, as you know, approved for us to move forward and go to the next step with the microgrids. So that is coming soon. So I'm gonna, let's take the time, kind of keep going here. So we still have a ways to go. So more in progress. This one is in the energy efficiency and conservation continued. There's also identified, some of these are very interesting where they ended up, but develop a tree inventory, and an inventory of park trees will be part of the new citywide work order asset management system. So a lot of these things that I am letting you know about, we do a tracking. Just on side note, we have an Excel spreadsheet that is very high technology here, but we have all the measures laid out, and then we have notes, and staff works frequently to make sure that these things are updated. So depending on where they are within the different departments, there's staff that we contact and have them provide the latest updates on those. So then also identify programs to switch appliances from natural gas to electricity. So the city's climate action webpage includes a lot of information on retrofit programs. And again, as I mentioned, PG&E, Sonoma Clean Power, the Skype program, that is constantly getting the information out, and we make it available where we can. So And so renewable energy, parking and land use management. So we continue to create municipal projects, which include renewable energy. And again, as I mentioned, AECOM, identifying the different opportunities for us and then beginning to move forward with those that make the most sense for the city. And then, of course, on here as well is the improved vehicular network to promote walking and biking. And there's a lot being done around that. And there's more in the municipal section. And you've recently heard that it was a public information, and it's on our website too, that roughly 4 miles of new and improved bike lanes are happening in this summer. And there's quite a bit more to come as well. So that I have also on this side. So on this slide, so that's implementing the bike and pedestrian master plan as part of that. That checks this box, several boxes. So the city's first two-way protected bike lanes are being installed now, as well as a two-way cycle track on the west side of Santa Rosa between First Street and Sonoma Ave this summer, and adding, as I mentioned, 4 miles of new improved bike lanes. There is also the effort continues working with Safe Routes to School program. And also a application has been submitted to receive a bicycle-friendly business designation through the League of American Bicyclists, and staff will also be applying to potentially improve our designation as a bicycle-friendly community. And okay, so then also in here, we have the support establishment of the Smart Rail service. Some of these are very old. We're 11 years over when this was developed. And as we know, SMART is running. And then in here also was the replaced bus fleet with GHG reducing vehicles. And as previously mentioned, so we've got 4 EV buses that have been in operation since last year. There was the approval of the city bus Zebra rollout plan. And as part of that, it will support city bus and transitioning its 29 bus fixed route fleet and 12 bus cutaway fleet to full electric by 2037. And that's actually 3 years ahead of the state requirement for full fleet electrification. Very, very impressive. All right. More. We are not done. You're going to have all of this now. All right. Be careful what you ask for. And so more on optimized vehicle travel and waste reduction, recycling, and composting. Again, as mentioned in February 2014, City and Council adopted an ordinance ending the availability of single-use bags. We have the Zero Waste Master Plan. That implementation is ongoing, and then the foodware ordinance. And then into water and wastewater and agricultural, local food, off-road vehicles and equipment. Here, I just want to highlight the energy optimization plan. This has been very, very important for the water department. I will mention more about that. But essentially, it's a roadmap for strategically and systematically optimizing energy use in our water operations, and that is through reduction of energy use, energy costs related to energy use, as well as GHGs. Santa Rosa Water is about 75% of our city municipal operations total energy budget each year. And so we really do get the biggest bang for our buck by focusing on what we do out of that treatment plant. And we've done some pretty impressive things I'll go into later. And then promoting slow food campaign for restaurants and wineries. And there's a lot of different things that are being done through this, but out there in the middle of everywhere that has a website and that has promoting of local restaurants and wineries and including slow food. Okay, so moving on to the municipal climate action plan. This has 7 areas of what was referred to as opportunities. There are a total of 46 measures identified, and 20 have been completed. There's 20 ongoing, and then there were just a small amount of 6 handful that were determined to be not cost effective or were done in some other capacity. So in August 6th of 2013 is when the council adopted the MCAP. And as I mentioned, it focuses on emissions associated with our facilities and operations. Okay, so wastewater operations. So we have many things that have happened since 2012. A high strength waste facility was completed that allowed us to actually bring in types of waste. So fats, oils, and greases from our community, provide a great opportunity for a place for those things to go, as opposed to being trucked outside of our community. So reducing truck miles and traveled and emissions from that. And something else that came out of that is that increased the energy we were able to get out of that system through the generation with our anaerobic digesters and the methane capture. And so I believe it was about a 17% increase. And we have had a huge demand for that, and the potential for us to look at expansion of that system is something that we've identified as something we'd like to do. So again, EOP as well, and that is really our roadmap. And one of the pieces of that is that we had AECOM also do a study separate from the facilities. We had the EOP, but we wanted to go next step. What was an opportunity as part of the recommendations out of the EOP that we could dive deeper into. And one of those things that was highest on the list was looking at additional solar. So we've looked at the Utilities Field Operations Center and covering with solar there, and then also the potential to do floating solar out at our ponds, which is something that has been a long time in the idea stage, and the report isn't complete yet, but we're hopeful that we'll have good news for you on that and be back for discussion. So one of the other very wonderful things that we did was the city switched to Evergreen, which is 100% renewables from Sonoma Clean Power. And we started looking at that in 2019 and rolled it into 2020. By the end of that point, we were able to get all of our accounts over to Evergreen, a little bit ahead of the rest of the city, but that was the beginning. And that has been fantastic. We've also done engine replacements, and when we do that, we always look for higher energy efficient engines, and we work with PG&E for rebates. Again, partnerships, huge. And also, one of my favorite things from the 17 years that I've been working for the city is, of course, our geysers project. And the fact that we send our tertiary treated water
Poop
up
power.
to the right, yeah, it's great. We've got lots of fun stories about what we're going to put on the side of the EV bus, but those were fun conversations. But needless to say, the full circle of sending our water up there and then purchasing it through some Sonoma Clean Power is fantastic. Additionally, something very innovative, we talk about this a little bit, or we just mentioned the innovation piece, and that was adding 2 SCRs, selective catalytic reducers at LTP to our engines, along with an additional 125 kW of solar. The SCRs allow us to decrease our emissions. They act like a catalytic converter on a car. So we're able to stay within our permit, below our air permit requirements, and then run our engines and have more of that high strength waste, producing additional methane, and then of course using that on site, which is another fantastic thing. And we continue to do upgrades to more efficient lighting, and also the AMI implementation has been completed as well, the automatic meter information system. So that has been very great. We get instant response or instant information knowing when there's leaks, and we're able to contact our customers and help them handle that as soon as possible. So more things completed in the building facilities. And as you see, employee commute and public lighting there. One of the items was to install a small cogeneration system at the Finley Center. That was done, a high efficiency boiler. And then a small cogeneration system was also installed. Parking division installed a total of 319 kW of rooftop solar and 4 parking facilities. And also the city has implemented a telework policy, and many staff are able to work 1 or more days from home. And as mentioned, we continue to install LED lights. So some of the items here in progress, and as you know and have probably seen, there are a lot of overlap or redundancies as part of our efforts. They may look a little different. So as a reminder, 46 measures, 20 completed. Here are the ones that are ongoing. As you see here, all of these have been done. The high efficiency lighting, the replacement of the air cooler, and then install a 1, 2, or 4 megawatt system. As I mentioned, AECOM, we're looking at those things for the utility field office, as well as the ponds at LTP fleet. I don't think I need to say much more. Peter did a very wonderful job of talking about our EVIMP, the master plan that's coming up. So more in progress. Employee commute, public lighting additional, and then the waste stream. We talked about the zero waste program. We'll also mention that city staff has worked on putting together a composting program, which you'll see, I'm sure you've seen all over the place, from recycling or composting our paper towels. And then we have in the kitchens, we have composting bins where people can put their food. And we've also provided staff with little compost bins for their desk. And we also put together a dish library for everyone. So there in the kitchens is plates, silverware, cups, coffee cups that are available. We ask staff whenever there's any kind of event or meeting that requires anything like that, we either have them bring their own, or in that respect, grab everything out of the kitchen and make it available. So that pretty much wraps up everything I have as far as the specific measures, but so a lot of the outcome you've heard about, but there's also addition and beyond. And a little recap. So 2019 to 2020, the switch to evergreen We had RCPI do a 2020 Sonoma County GHG inventory presentation. They have historically been the ones that periodically have updated the GHG inventory for all the cities and the counties. And the last report out was that we were at 22.3% below 1990s levels as a county, but also the city is 28%, reduced by 28% between 1990 and 2020. And I also want to go back and mention that with that RCPA 2020 GHG inventory, that is close to almost achieving the 2020 GHG reduction goal of 25% below 1990 levels. And those were established sometime earlier. And then just running through here, as I mentioned, the AECOM program or analysis, some of those are complete, then projects are in process. We're in the process of completing the AECOM analysis for Santa Rosa Water. I also want to mention the gas station ordinance that went into effect in 2022. That, of course, wasn't in the MCAP or the CCAP, but that is something that as we continue to do everything that we possibly can and look at new opportunities, that's another one that we took advantage of and pushed forward. And then, of course, the 2023-24 City Council goal to address climate change and having that be out in front. So let's see. And now also to kind of wrap my little part up here is the moving forward is the update to the climate action plans we have. And that's being done as part of the general plan update. And so we continue to develop different GHG reduction strategies and coordinate with our partners in the community and our residents. And now it's integrating goals and strategies and general plan. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Amy Lyle.
Thank you so much. All right, I've presented to you many times, you know who I am, but I'm Amy Lyle and I manage our long range planning team. And then as part of that, I get to work with Sherry as a co-project manager on their general plan update. And then we have Estrella, who's our newest intern, introduce her as well. So she's going to be working with us over the summer before she heads off back to college on the East Coast. So she'll be working on our general plan engagement coming up as well. And so really, I am just adding input into the presentation today. I really appreciate the opportunity because we want to talk about and just reiterate what's happening with the update of the climate action plan and how that's integrated into the general plan. And so basically, it is going to be integrated. So we will no longer have a standalone cap. We'll have a general plan, and we actually will be releasing that in a couple weeks here, the draft. And that's going to include greenhouse gas emission reduction policies, climate action policies related to adaptation, resiliency. And then along with that, we'll have a greenhouse gas reduction strategy, which will be an appendix to the general plan. So it's going to look and feel a lot different than what we have now as far as this separate cap. And the reason we're doing this is really because it's the best practice to have these integrated, because under state law, in order to utilize a climate action plan, you really need to have assessed the growth of the city, all of the inventory targets and the actual emission reduction targets need to be holistically considered. And so having that as part of the general plan is really the ideal solution. So there will no longer be a separate cap. And we'll talk a little bit about how that relates to the municipal climate action plan as well. But just want to also note that we have a couple different things that will be happening over the next few months. So we'll talk about schedule and how these things will be integrated. Can I move to the next one? Okay. And so just as far as what has happened so far and what will be happening, We did do a vulnerability assessment, so that's on our website. And along with that, we also did some work with EcoAdapt around the same time period. So we were chosen by EcoAdapt, which is an East Coast organization, as one of, I think, 5 or 10 cities to do an adaptation project. And so they're actually following us over a number of years. And so we did get a report from them. We also worked with the Urban Land Institute on some climate work. So all of that's being incorporated into our work now. And then the inventory that we did is similar to the one RCPA did, but we wanted to do it just for our city. And so the work that RCPA did was incorporated as well. So that's been completed. And then, of course, our forecasting and then looking at our reduction targets. So our state targets have shifted since we actually started the general plan update. And of course, we have our climate emergency resolution, which sets a net zero by 2030, which is basically tomorrow. So we're really right now working with our consultant team to make sure that the strategies are looking at all of those different aspects. Because it's one thing to meet the state targets, but it's another when you're talking about carbon neutrality by 2030. So we're asking, what does that look like? And so we've asked them to really help us go bolder. And so we've been working with our technical advisory committee, which is basically our departments within the city, to review what's in our general plan draft. And then what kind of strategies can we do? What ideas do we have? So we have something that really does match the expectation of what you all have, as council, have put forward to us. So all of that will be coming out in the next few weeks, which is very exciting. And then we will be doing some engagement over the late summer. So in August, we'll be doing a series of surveys and workshops. There will be many questions that relate directly to the climate action work. There, like I said, there's some very bold things. So we're going to be asking the community what they think about some of these different policies and programs that may directly impact how people operate and live within the city. And so with that, do you want to talk about the municipal side of things? And I'm happy to weigh in if you would like me to as well.
So with the municipal climate action plan, as you saw, there was quite a few overlaps that were similar to what was written in the CAP and then pulled into, okay, well, the community is going to be doing that, but we also will be doing that. So really, as the conversation went on, knowing these different strategies that we've done, we've got, our own internal EOP, we've got the EV master plan. These things are already rolling. And as the general plan comes about, and there's that element of the climate action plan, it really is about what is required of outside within the community is also what we need to follow. And the bigger picture is we need to get to carbon neutrality by 2030. So that we have to focus on for our municipal operations. So as it had been done before with these two separate documents, and then looking out into other cities and counties and what they were doing, they were all moving to this same model of incorporating everything into a general plan update and the element of a climate action plan rather than having this separated idea. It's like we have our plans to meet these goals, but then this is a much more holistic approach because we are going to be following the same things. Mm-hmm. So.
And then if I could piggyback on this slide too.
Oh yeah,
yeah. So another aspect of our work is that we do have some PG&E funds available related to climate action planning implementation. And so we are waiting for the climate action plan and general plan work to conclude to identify how to spend those funds. But one thing that we have identified, and I know it's come through this committee before, is creating a dashboard. So everything that Tasha just talked through, that can be public, transparent, updated often. And so the community can see exactly what's happening as far as the various actions and where we're at as far as inventories and targets. So that's something that is on the horizon, and also the GHG inventory.
Yes, and so as we talk about next steps and kind of moving off of the MCAP and how that's rolling in, well, what are our next steps and strategies, and what does that look like for us? So the department work plans is one of the things that we're looking to do, because each department is very, very different, and what they have from one to the next is doesn't always look the same. Our goal is the same, but how we get there and our operations looking much different is we all need our own work plans. And then, so that's going to be a piece of it. As mentioned, the dashboard, we've talked about this for many years because there's this constant, well, what is the city doing? And unless people are hearing these kind of things, we don't put it out on flyers. We don't have little blurbs on the local radio stations like, this is what we're doing. It's much harder for the community to really know what is happening and what we're actually doing. So the conversation continues with RCPA and the other cities. How can we make sure that people know, and what is something that would be useful for us? So a dashboard would be a great tool for both staff to be able to put these measures into, and there's a real-time update of here's the measures, this is where we're at, here's our progress. Staff can utilize that, and then the public can see where we have come from and where we're going. So we are in conversation with our CPA, looking at what tools are available out there and where we want to go with this and how that's going to work, because we want apples to apples in our community. We work really hard in the county. It's a much bigger. We're trying not to work in silos. We're more powerful in numbers. And so if we're all using the same tool and the public can go to each city and see their dashboards the same, understand how to use them, that would be a really wonderful thing. And then the GHG inventory updates. Historically, the RCP has been the one that has been doing those. And I think that the dashboard, if we can pair something also up with the dashboard and have a more frequent GHG inventory, so we're not 5 years and then we see where we're at. That is another of the strategies we're hoping for. So that's it. So if there's any questions, there's Amy's contact and my contact there, and open up.
Perfect. I'll see if there's any questions.
Sure, I have a few questions. This is quite comprehensive. Thank you.
A lot.
And
Sorry, it was a lot.
that's not what I meant. What I meant is it's wonderful to hear everything that each department is doing. And I especially love the piece about trying things, them not working, trying something else. And I think that's just wonderful to take risks and see what happens. My questions are all over the board about different potential uses or methods of reduction. Forgive me, this is my first climate subcommittee meeting. So one is, are materials types being considered in road repaving to, I know that's not really a carbon issue so much, although you could sequester carbon, but around heat generated from asphalt, are we looking at different materials in the field for when we go to do overlays or new roads?
One of our future items we're going to be coming to you will be about low carbon concrete.
Wonderful.
We have a report update for you.
Great. So one check. You also got one earlier around the photovoltaic arrays, so well done. Potable reuse. at the treatment plant? Where are we with that? Considering that as part of the plan.
Yeah, we have, by the end of the year, our water future plan, and part of the portfolios for evaluation does include potable reuse of the
Beautiful.
future water supply option.
And then telework. I said, some people are able to work one day away. Is the city administration looking at, how to maximize telework for employees who don't need to be here in person?
Yeah, so that's, I don't know if one of you want to take that, but it definitely varies. And I can say just from my boots on the ground level, working with Peter as our supervisor, he manages multiple teams. And for instance, my team, we need to be more in the office. And so we only work from home one day a week. Whereas one of our other teams, they have much more flexibility. They can work 2 days per week. So I think that the city is, if it's reflective of what we've been doing, we really try to work to maximize and what makes sense. And of course, we have our utility system operators who they've got to be at work.
Sure,
every day.
of course.
So
No, I'm talking about-
but as far as the people who are in the office, and if either one of you want to add anything.
I mean, it just goes back to the HR policy that's out there. It's up to 50%. Of the
Right. So I guess what my question is, when was the policy last updated and what's the logic behind the number of up to 50%? I mean, I get it that, it's difficult for the people who have to work in person. I do a job where I have to work in person, but I would never want somebody who doesn't have to be in person to have to be in person just out of trying to make other people feel good about having to be in person.
So the remote work policy was actually adopted in 2021, 2022. It's not been implemented for a very long period of time.
Okay.
We are, with the changeover in staff, we're starting to revitalize all of the employees' agreements on how they're going to implement and operate through that work policy. We tried to look at what other agencies were doing as far as a standard, and unfortunately, there's no standard. It's all over the board. So we believe we conform with the general average of what agencies are doing from a remote work. I'd consider this a test. Right now, the industry on remote work is, just looking, for example, from the engineering, some companies are going 100% remote. Others are going completely back into the office and they're not allowing any remote work. We're somewhere in the middle at this point. So taking the data, looking at how we're efficiently producing work, following our production metrics, then we'll determine if more can happen or less should happen.
Okay. And then last two questions, hopefully they won't take too long. One is we implemented the REACH code a few years ago. Have the building codes changed to allow us to go higher on that one? For next time, maybe? Cool. And then the last one's a really tiny one, which is I hear about all this great stuff from the water department with my little plastic covered water bill. And it just boggles the mind as we're getting rid of single-use plastics, but the city, and I'm sure it's a contractor that holds the contract. When's that contract up and are we gonna, stop doing that?
This is the address window on the envelope. Make that note.
I think I see nodding heads from staff.
Yeah, I don't know the inner workings of billing, but that's something I'll take a note of and I'll take that.
Awesome, thanks. That's all of my questions for today.
Great. Any questions? No? All right, let's go to public comment. You have a comment you'd like to make, sir?
Oh, my goodness. I'm overwhelmed with the amount that you're doing, and I'm so very proud that you're doing it as a city. And I'm getting into my business mind that I used to have when I was working, and I hope this doesn't offend anyone. But in looking at this, I was wondering, my God, how many people are you, what resources are you going to be needing to implement all of this? And then I said, well, kind of thinking here, If you don't have enough, and you probably never do have enough resources, then you certainly ought to prioritize what comes first. And if I had my druthers, I would have liked to seen, 2030 is right around the corner. I would like to have seen priority in this. Which ones are your top? So that as times go on, you can reallocate resources and make sure that the top gets done. I just worry about getting all this done, okay? Yeah.
Any other comments? Anybody online?
There are no hands raised on Zoom.
Great. I'll bring it back. Question, any additional comments?
Going.
I just thank you for the presentation and maybe just a suggestion on the dashboard, maybe having priorities and when are the expected completion, like if there is an expected completion date, or if it's just something that's ongoing. That might be a good thing to show and tell the public on the dashboards. And I had a question about all electric, but
You can ask.
well, just the new builds that are installing and they're all electric and they install like 8 solar panels or something. I think that they should have to disclose per how many square feet the actual house is, like what those 8 solar panels are gonna do. Because in some instances, they don't do anything, depending on how large the house is. And people, after buying a home, and we all know how expensive homes are here, they have to invest additional into solar, but they think, or it's marketed that you're buying a home and it has solar. But that is a lie. It has solar, but sometimes depending on how large the house is, it does not do anything. So that was just, I don't think we have a policy or anything that tells, that makes the builder disclose those types of things. And when you have a house that is all electric and you have itty bitty solar panels that don't do very much, that's a very high electricity bill. And the price of energy is continuing to go up. So when we have the all electric ordinance on new builds.
Okay. And I just want to say thank you also. I am going to hold you to it, Amy, that there's going to be some stretch goals in there, some things that are coming forward that are going to make people have to actually question their commitment to achieving the goals that we need to achieve. And one of the things that I've been reading a lot more about over the last couple of days was the first ever in the United States wet bulb temperatures down in the southeast. And for folks, that's where you have the confluence between the temperature and the humidity level to where sweat no longer evaporates off of somebody's skin. And if they're out working, particularly in the fields, that they have literally no way to cool themselves if they don't have access to air conditioning. And this is just going to continue to happen as climate change happens. So as we see that, as we see pretty much everywhere else in the world having their highest temperature day ever on Monday, I think it's really good for us to throw that out there to the community and say, this is what it's going to take for us to be carbon neutral. Are you willing to do it or not? And I know we have polling that just came back from RCPA really asking kind of those same questions. So looking forward to it. Keep up the good work on it. Any additional comments?
Let's do it.
All right, with that, we're adjourned. Thank you, everybody.